The office was quiet that morning, almost too quiet. The hum of computers and soft clicking of keyboards were the only sounds. He sat behind his large mahogany desk, going over financial reports and contracts. His focus was absolute, as if nothing in the world could distract him. But something felt off. A slight unease had settled over him, something he couldn't put his finger on. He had spent years building his business, trusting few and keeping his personal life private. Yet today, there was a sense that someone was watching. From the corner of the office, she appeared. She was young, bright-eyed, and worked in the company's compliance department. She always noticed details that others ignored. Today, she walked slowly, almost hesitantly, toward his desk. Her hands were clasped nervously in front of her, and her eyes didn't meet his at first. She had spotted something unusual the previous day, something that didn't fit. He looked up from his reports as she reached the edge of his desk. "Can I help you with something?" he asked, his voice calm but carrying an edge of curiosity. She swallowed hard, then leaned slightly closer. Her voice was low and soft, almost like a whisper, but it carried a weight that made him sit up straighter. "There's a camera in your office," and she said. He froze. The papers in front of him suddenly seemed less important. He studied her face, searching for any hint of deception or jest, but there was none. Her expression was serious, almost fearful. "A camera? Are you sure?" he asked, keeping his voice even, though his heart had started to race. She nodded. "Yes, I saw it yesterday when I was checking the new security system installation. It was small, almost hidden, but it's there, and it doesn't seem like it's for normal security." His mind raced. Cameras were common in offices for security, but the thought that someone might be secretly recording him was disturbing. Who could want to do this? Why? And how long had it been there? He gestured for her to sit down, though she remained standing. "Thank you for telling me. This is serious. Did anyone else notice it?" She shook her head. "No, I didn't mention it to anyone else. I wasn't sure what to do, but I knew I had to tell you." He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. Trust was something he had learned to guard fiercely. Every decision, every person he allowed close to him had been measured and scrutinized. Yet here was a situation that made him question even his closest circle. "I'll take it, Fro." The next morning the office felt different. There was an underlying tension that the staff couldn't quite identify. He entered his office early, before most of the employees arrived, and immediately began reviewing security logs, emails, and access records. Every detail mattered. He needed to understand not just what had happened, but who could have done it and why. The young employee who had warned him about the camera was already at her desk, working quietly. She looked up when he passed by, a mixture of curiosity and apprehension in her eyes. He gave her a small nod, acknowledging her presence without drawing attention. She had been brave enough to speak up yesterday, and now she was quietly assisting him in ways he couldn't openly request. He started by checking the footage from the security system. Everything appeared normal at first, but his eyes were trained to look for the smallest irregularity. He noticed subtle gaps in the recordings, brief moments where the camera angles shifted unnaturally. Someone had tampered with the system, and the implications were troubling. This wasn't just a casual act of curiosity. It was calculated. He decided to test the reactions of those around him. During the day, he kept a calm exterior, pretending nothing was wrong, but he observed everything. Every glance, every hesitation, every subtle movement of the staff was noted in his mind. It was like playing a silent game, and he needed to identify the person who had crossed the line into his private world. The young employee occasionally brought him notes. She had started her own small investigation, checking unusual activity in office devices, emails, and login records. Her thoroughness impressed him. She wasn't just noticing things. She was thinking critically about them, connecting dots that others would have overlooked. As he reviewed these findings, he noticed a pattern. Someone was accessing sensitive files from unusual locations and at strange times. It wasn't frequent, but the occurrences were precise, deliberate. The idea that it could be an inside job became more and more likely. By mid-afternoon, he decided to set a subtle trap. He created a fake document containing harmless but unusual data and marked it as confidential. Then he monitored who attempted to access it. It was a quiet observation, but he hoped it would reveal the person who had been meddling with the office systems. Meanwhile, the young employee continued to help discreetly. She suggested looking into physical access as well, checking for small devices that could have been. The day started like any other, but he knew it would be critical. Today he had to observe and test the reactions of those around him more carefully than ever. The office seemed calm, but beneath the surface, tension was thick. Every smile, every casual comment, and every glance was being noted in his mind. The young employee arrived early as always, and he motioned for her to sit briefly. She handed him a small notebook with observations she had compiled. She had been meticulous, noting access times, unusual movements, and inconsistencies in conversations. He reviewed it silently, impressed by her precision. This information could guide the next phase of his investigation. He decided to act subtly, preparing a situation that might reveal the truth. He called a few team members into his office for a brief meeting on a minor project, but the real purpose was to observe their reactions to certain sensitive topics. The fiancée entered last, her usual confidence slightly unsettled. He noticed the tension in her shoulders and the way her eyes darted quickly around the room, taking in every detail. As the meeting progressed, he mentioned minor security update. The morning air felt heavy as he entered the office, the tension from the previous day still lingering. Today he knew the truth would finally come to light. He had spent hours preparing, reviewing every detail, every observation, every subtle clue that the young employee had noted, and he had confirmed. It was time for clarity, and nothing would be left to chance. The office was quiet at first, employees immersed in their work, unaware of the storm that was about to unfold. He arrived at his desk early, reviewing the evidence one final time. The network access logs, the hidden cameras, the subtle behaviors he had carefully observed, all of it pointed in one direction. The betrayal was real, personal, and deliberate. He called the fiancée into his office under the pretense of discussing a minor project update. She entered with her usual poised smile, but he immediately noticed the tension in her expression, the slight hesitation in her steps, the way her eyes avoided his. She had sensed that he knew more than he let on. He began casually, discussing the project as if nothing were wrong. Every word, every gesture, every glance was calculated. He needed her to reveal herself without direct confrontation, to see the truth in her reactions. As he mentioned certain security protocols and confidential data handling procedures, her unease became more apparent. She fidgeted slightly, her voice tight, her gaze wandering. Each subtle reaction confirmed his suspicions. He had anticipated these signs, and they unfolded exactly as he had expected. He paused, observing her carefully. The young employee had discreetly joined the office from a distance, keeping watch on network activity and behavior. She had been essential in compiling the evidence and tracking subtle actions that could not be observed by the human eye alone. He casually brought up the topic of recent office access irregularities. He spoke slowly, deliberately, emphasizing the seriousness of confidentiality and trust. Her face paled slightly, her hands tightening on the folder she held. He could see the conflict in her eyes, the internal struggle between denial and admission. The day after the revelation began quietly. The office seemed to carry a lighter air now that the truth had been exposed, yet there was an underlying tension that reminded everyone of the events that had unfolded. He arrived early as usual, ready to manage both the professional and personal aftermath of the situation. His mind was occupied with planning how to restore trust and ensure that such a breach would never happen again. The young employee had already arrived, her presence calm yet attentive. She had been instrumental throughout the investigation, and now in the aftermath she continued to assist by monitoring systems and ensuring that no further irregular activity occurred. Her diligence and courage had been central to uncovering the truth, and he made sure to acknowledge her contributions, though quietly, respecting her preference for discretion. He reviewed the security systems once more, confirming that all unauthorized access points had been addressed and secured. The hidden camera had been removed, and all digital traces of tampering had been carefully documented. The steps taken were meticulous, aimed not only at repairing the breach but also at preventing future vulnerabilities. The fiancée, now aware that her actions had been fully uncovered, faced the consequences of her choices. The conversation from the previous day had clarified the situation, leaving no ambiguity. He understood that trust, once broken, required deliberate effort to rebuild if it could be rebuilt at all. This required patience, reflection, and clear boundaries moving forward. Throughout the morning, he observed the office, noting how employees interacted and how the atmosphere had shifted. Some were relieved, others uncertain, but the clarity provided by the revelation had restored a sense of order. Transparency, he realized, was essential in maintaining both personal. The days following the revelation had brought a new rhythm to the office. Life continued, but there was an air of heightened awareness and cautious trust among the employees. He arrived early, as always, and observed quietly, ensuring that operations ran smoothly and that all systems were secure. The young employee was already at her desk, working with her usual focus and careful attention to detail. Her dedication had proven invaluable, and he appreciated her silent but vital role in maintaining the office's integrity. The fiancée, while still present, moved through the office with measured steps. She understood the importance of demonstrating accountability and rebuilding credibility, but the weight of her prior actions lingered in her demeanor. He watched her interactions, noting her efforts to communicate professionally and cautiously with colleagues. She had learned that trust required more than words. It required consistent actions over time. He called a brief meeting with a few key team members to discuss the implementation of enhanced security protocols. The goal was not to punish, but to establish clear standards and prevent any future breaches. Access to sensitive information was now more closely monitored, and all staff were reminded of the importance of transparency and ethical conduct. The young employee provided detailed updates, explaining the adjustments and observations she had made, which reassured him that nothing would go unnoticed. Throughout the morning, he observed the office, noting subtle changes in behavior. Employees who had been unaware of the previous issues now acted with more attention to detail, checking their systems and communications carefully. The environment had shifted, and while there was no lingering resentment, there was a shared understanding that diligence and honesty were now paramount. During lunch, he had a brief private conversation with the fiancée. He emphasized that while consequences had been addressed, there was an opportunity for her to demonstrate genuine responsibility moving forward. He offered guidance on rebuilding credibility, highlighting the importance of patience, integrity, and consistency in her actions. She listened attentively, nodding, absorbing every word, understanding that trust could only be earned through effort and sincerity. Meanwhile, the young employee continued to work meticulously, checking logs, monitoring systems, and observing subtle office dynamics. Her contributions had become a stabilizing force in the office, ensuring that any irregularities would be detected promptly. He acknowledged her efforts silently but profoundly, aware that her courage and dedication had been the catalyst for uncovering the truth. The afternoon brought a series of routine meetings, but he approached each with heightened awareness. Every interaction was carefully noted, and he remained vigilant for any sign of irregular behavior. The fiancée participated professionally, demonstrating a conscious effort to rebuild rapport with colleagues. While the atmosphere was tense at times, it was clear that lessons had been learned, and the office was adapting to a new level of accountability. He spent some time reviewing financial and operational reports, cross-referencing data to ensure that no discrepancies had been overlooked. The meticulous review confirmed that all irregularities had been addressed and that security measures were functioning as intended. The work was thorough, leaving no room for error, and he felt a growing sense of confidence that the office was once again operating safely and efficiently. Later, he took a moment to reflect on the young employee's role. Her bravery in speaking up, her attention to detail, and her unwavering integrity had been pivotal. Without her, the breach might have gone unnoticed, and the consequences could have been far more severe. He recognized the importance of fostering an environment where such courage was valued and encouraged, ensuring that honesty and vigilance were rewarded. The fiancée, meanwhile, continued to navigate the delicate process of regaining trust. She approached her tasks with care, communicated openly with colleagues, and followed all new protocols diligently. Her actions were being monitored not as a form of punishment, but as a way to ensure that responsibility and accountability were consistently demonstrated. As the day drew to a close, he reviewed the office systems one final time. The networks were secure, access logs were consistent, and there were no signs of ongoing irregularities. The office had stabilized, and the lessons of the past days were now firmly embedded in its operations. He felt a sense of accomplishment and relief, knowing that both the immediate crisis and the underlying vulnerabilities had been addressed thoroughly. He called a brief debrief with the young employee, discussing observations, minor adjustments, and long-term recommendations. They reviewed security protocols, behavioral patterns, and reporting procedures, ensuring that any future issues would be detected quickly and managed effectively. Her insights were invaluable, providing clarity and guidance that would help maintain the office's integrity. The fiancé joined them briefly, participating professionally and demonstrating a willingness to follow the guidance provided. She asked questions, sought clarification, and expressed a sincere commitment to uphold the standards expected of her. The interaction was measured and respectful, signaling the beginning of a gradual process of rebuilding trust. As evening approached, he reflected on the broader implications of the events. Trust, he realized, was fragile but not irreparable. Integrity and accountability were essential, and even in moments of breach, careful observation, patience, and strategic action could restore clarity and stability. The courage of individuals willing to speak up, combined with methodical monitoring and fair confrontation, could transform a crisis into a lesson that strengthened both personal and professional relationships. The office emptied for the night, leaving him and the young employee to complete final checks. They verified system security, confirmed access protocols, and ensured that all sensitive information was safeguarded. Every precaution was taken to prevent recurrence and maintain the integrity of the office environment. As they concluded their work, he expressed his gratitude once more to the young employee. Her dedication and courage had not only uncovered the breach but had also ensured that the resolution was thorough, fair, and measured. She had demonstrated the value of integrity. Observa. He took a de-action and careful action, and he recognized that her role would continue to be vital in maintaining the office's standards. He left the office with a sense of closure and reflection. The crisis had been resolved, lessons had been learned, and the office environment had been strengthened by vigilance, accountability, and integrity. The fiancée had begun the process of regaining trust. The young employee had been acknowledged for her courage, and he had ensured that systems, both human and technological, were secure. Night settled over the building, quiet and contemplative. The events had left their mark, but the outcome was constructive and grounded in fairness. The importance of courage, integrity, patience, and observation had been reaffirmed. The office, though tested, was now resilient, prepared and aware of the standards necessary to maintain both trust and security. The lessons learned would guide future actions, interactions, and safeguards, ensuring that vigilance and ethical conduct remained at the heart of every decision and every relationship. Professional integrity. He called a brief meeting with the core team to address the situation calmly. He did not dwell on blame or punishment, but focused on lessons learned and steps for moving forward. The importance of vigilance, honesty, and integrity in the workplace was emphasized, and the discussion highlighted the need for careful attention to both technology and interpersonal trust. The young employee presented a concise summary of the observations and findings, demonstrating how careful documentation and courage had uncovered the breach. Her role was recognized formally, reinforcing the message that honesty and diligence were valued above all. He then turned his attention to the fiancée, ensuring that she understood the impact of her actions and the importance of rebuilding any remaining trust through concrete, responsible steps. While personal reconciliation might take time, the immediate priority was professional accountability. Procedures were put in place to ensure that all systems were secure, all access points monitored, and all employees aware of the importance of ethical conduct. As the day progressed, he worked alongside the young employee to implement new security measures, enhancing both digital and physical safeguards. They reviewed access logs, updated passwords, and verified the integrity of all sensitive information. Every step was thorough, leaving no room for error. The fiancée cooperated fully, demonstrating awareness of her mistakes and commitment to rectify them. While trust was not instantly restored, her willingness to participate in corrective measures was noted. The environment required balance between accountability and support, and careful attention was given to ensure fairness and clarity. He also took time to reflect personally. Considering the lessons learned about trust, observation, and vigilance, the events had been a wake-up call, reinforcing that even those closest to him could act against expectations. Yet the resolution had demonstrated the power of patience, methodical observation, and careful confrontation. In the afternoon, he had a private discussion with the young employee, expressing gratitude for her courage and insight. He emphasized that her actions had been essential in maintaining the integrity of both the office and personal boundaries. Her contributions were recognized as both brave and responsible, reinforcing a culture of honesty and integrity. The remainder of the day involved reviewing policies, ensuring compliance, and reinforcing awareness among all staff. Training sessions were organized to educate employees about ethical behavior, confidentiality, and proper handling of sensitive information. The goal was not only to prevent future breaches, but to cultivate a culture of trust, transparency, and mutual respect. By evening, the office had returned to a sense of calm. The immediate crisis was resolved, evidence had been documented, and both the breach and its consequences were fully addressed. The fiancée had faced accountability, the young employee had been recognized for her integrity, and the billionaire had ensured that safeguards were stronger than ever. He reflected on the human elements of the experience. Technology, while important, was secondary to observation, intuition, and careful attention to behavior. The courage to speak up, the patience to observe, and the strategic approach to confronting the truth had proven essential. These were lessons that would guide him both professionally and personally in the future. As the office emptied for the night, he remained at his desk for a moment, reviewing the events and the resolutions. The situation had been handled with careful balance, addressing both human emotions and professional responsibilities. The hidden camera, the unauthorized access, and the deceptive actions had all been addressed decisively and fairly. He felt a sense of closure, knowing that the truth had been revealed, accountability ensured, and lessons learned. The young employee had demonstrated bravery and integrity, and the fiancée had faced the consequences of her choices. The office, though forever marked by these events, would move forward with clarity, vigilance, and awareness. Night settled over the building, quiet and reflective. The experience had underscored the importance of trust, careful observation, and deliberate action. While betrayal had occurred, the response had been measured, fair, and thorough. The lessons learned would guide future decisions, interactions, and safeguards, ensuring that vigilance and integrity remained at the core of both personal and professional life. After a moment, he leaned forward, lowering his voice just slightly, making the question more personal without accusing. "Do you know anything about unauthorized access to confidential files?" he asked, letting the silence hang between them. She hesitated, caught off guard. Her initial instinct was to deflect, but the weight of the evidence and his unwavering observation made it impossible to lie convincingly. She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it, her composure slipping. He remained calm, letting her discomfort speak for itself. He didn't need to raise his voice or accuse. The evidence, the patterns, and her behavior were more than enough. He had watched her closely for days, and now the moment had come for the truth to emerge. Finally, she spoke, her voice low, hesitant, and tinged with fear. I didn't mean for it to go this far," she admitted, the words barely audible. Her eyes searched his, seeking understanding or perhaps forgiveness, but she found only calm, steady scrutiny. He listened quietly, allowing her to explain. She confessed to installing the camera and accessing files, citing reasons she thought justified but which clearly violated trust. She had believed she was acting in some form of loyalty or advantage, but the consequences were undeniable. The young employee, observing discreetly from a safe distance, noted every word, every subtle reaction, recording the final piece of evidence. Her presence had been critical, ensuring that the investigation had been thorough, precise, and fair. EP breath, processing her words. The betrayal stung, but the situation required clarity and careful handling. There was no room for anger or rash judgment. Every action from here would define not only the professional outcome, but the personal consequences as well. He asked her to explain the details, the timing of the installation, the methods used, and any other individuals who might have been involved. She provided the information, nervous and hesitant, revealing everything she had tried to conceal. Throughout the conversation, he maintained calm control, ensuring that the revelation was complete and factual. He wanted no ambiguity, no chance for doubt. The truth had to be undeniable, both for himself and for the integrity of the office environment. After she had confessed fully, he paused, letting the gravity of the situation sink in. The young employee stepped forward, presenting the compiled evidence from the network logs and observations. The combination of confession and documentation created an airtight understanding of the events. The fiancée now faced the undeniable reality of her actions. There was no room for manipulation or deception. The breach of trust had been exposed and the consequences were clear. The office, the systems, and the personal bonds all required acknowledgement of the truth. He addressed the situation directly but calmly. The conversation was serious, formal, and focused on accountability. The fiancé listened, absorbing the impact of her decisions, understanding the full weight of the breach. It was a moment of clarity for everyone involved. The young employee who had courageously spoken up from the start received recognition quietly. Her role had been essential in uncovering the truth, and her bravery and diligence were noted. She had acted with integrity, ensuring that justice and clarity were served without unnecessary confrontation. By the end of the day, the immediate revelation was complete. The truth had been brought to light, betrayal had been exposed, and accountability was clear. The office atmosphere shifted subtly. The tension remained, but the uncertainty was gone. The situation had been handled with careful precision, balancing personal feelings with professional responsibility. As evening fell, he reviewed the events in his mind. The careful observation, the methodical tracking of evidence, and the strategic confrontation had achieved the goal. The hidden camera, the unauthorized access, and the deceptive actions had all been uncovered. The lessons were clear. Vigilance, patience, and integrity were essential, both in business and personal life. He felt a mixture of relief and resolve. Relief that the truth was now known and resolve to ensure such breaches would never happen again. The young employee's role had been vital, demonstrating that courage and honesty could uncover even the most carefully hidden actions. The office emptied, leaving him alone with the knowledge that the revelation had been thorough and fair. Trust had been broken, but clarity had been achieved. He understood the importance of addressing such issues with careful attention to both fact and emotion, ensuring that the truth was fully understood and consequences properly managed. Night settled over the office, quiet and reflective. The situation had reached a critical turning point, with truth and accountability at the center. The hidden camera and secret monitoring had been exposed, and the fiancé's actions were undeniable. He sat at his desk, reviewing the day's events one last time, understanding that the revelation was complete. The balance between human emotion and professional responsibility had been maintained, and the office, though shaken, would move forward with clarity and awareness. The next steps would involve restoration, reflection, and careful management of trust, but for now the truth was finally unveiled, as in upcoming reviews. He watched her closely. She nodded politely, but her gaze betrayed her unease. He didn't need words to understand that she was hiding something. Every subtle shift in posture, every forced smile, and every brief hesitation spoke louder than any explanation could. After the meeting, he asked everyone to leave except for her and a couple of other employees whose trustworthiness he wasn't questioning. He suggested they take a short break and left the room briefly, pretending to deal with a phone call. From a distance, he observed her reaction. She reached for her phone several times, checking messages, then put it down quickly when she realized he might see. Small details like this confirmed his suspicion that she was involved in something she shouldn't be. When he returned, he began a casual conversation about office technology, discussing minor updates and security procedures. The fiancé listened but responded cautiously. He noticed that she avoided looking directly at him during certain statements, her voice slightly tighter than usual. Meanwhile, the young employee monitored the office systems, noting any irregular activity. There was a small spike in network access near the confidential file he had prepared. Someone had tried to access it again. The evidence was accumulating quietly but surely. He decided it was time to increase the pressure subtly. He created another confidential document with unusual data and marked it as highly sensitive. This time he watched more carefully who attempted to access it. Within hours, a connection attempt was made from her workstation. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was evidence. Rather than confronting her immediately, he continued to observe her behavior. He watched how she interacted with colleagues, how she responded to casual questions, and how she moved through the office. Each small reaction was noted. He wanted the final revelation to be undeniable, both for his own understanding and to handle the situation carefully. Later in the afternoon, he arranged for a casual one-on-one discussion with her. He didn't accuse, but he asked about minor technical issues and mentioned certain data policies. She responded quickly, almost too quickly, revealing details she hadn't been prompted to provide. His suspicions were confirmed. She had intimate knowledge of systems she shouldn't have accessed. The young employee discreetly updated him with her observations. The combination of behavioral cues and digital evidence painted a clear picture. The fiancé was involved in unauthorized monitoring, and the hidden cameras were part of a broader plan. He felt a mixture of betrayal and determination. This was personal now, not just professional. He spent the rest of the day preparing for a controlled confrontation. He needed to ensure that the moment would reveal the truth clearly, without giving her a chance to manipulate the situation. Evidence had to be presented in a way that was undeniable. That evening, he reviewed every detail once more. The patterns of access, her behavior, and the camera's placement all aligned. The plan had been deliberate, careful, and deceptive. He couldn't help but feel a pang of disappointment. Trust once given was fragile, and the violation stung deeply. He prepared a scenario for the next day, a casual office discussion designed to reveal her guilt without a direct accusation. He also arranged for the young employee to assist discreetly, ensuring that everything would be observed and recorded if necessary. This wasn't about punishment yet. It was about uncovering the truth. As the office emptied, he stayed behind, reflecting on the day's events. The sense of being watched had transformed into a strategy to confront the issue carefully. Each step had been deliberate, each observation purposeful. The patience and precision he had applied in business would now guide his handling of personal betrayal. He felt a mixture of anticipation and resolve. Tomorrow would bring clarity. The fiancé's actions, once hidden, would be revealed. The young employee had played a crucial role, and he intended to acknowledge her bravery when the truth came to light. Night fell, and the office was quiet. He sat at his desk, reviewing notes, observations, and patterns. The plan was clear: patience, careful observation, and strategic confrontation. The truth was within reach, and he would approach it with the same precision that had always defined him. This day had been critical. It had provided evidence, behavioral cues, and the understanding that the betrayal was close, personal, and deliberate. He felt the weight of responsibility, not just to protect his business, but to ensure the integrity of his personal life. Tomorrow would be the day when the truth could no longer hide behind subtle actions and evasive behavior, planted around the office. Together, they scanned the office furniture, cabinets, and common areas. It was tedious work, but it was necessary. Even the smallest overlooked detail could provide the key to understanding the breach. During lunch, he observed the staff interactions. Everyone seemed normal on the surface, but he could sense subtle tension in certain areas. The fiancée, in particular, was behaving differently. She avoided eye contact, moved quickly through the office, and seemed anxious when certain topics were discussed. It was subtle, but his trained eyes noticed. After lunch, he invited the fiancée to his office under the pretense of reviewing a project. He wanted to gauge her reaction in a controlled environment. She entered the office with a polite smile, but there was a slight tremor in her hands as she held her notes. He began casual conversation, paying attention to her responses, tone, and body language. As he suspected, she showed signs of discomfort when he mentioned security updates and confidential data. It wasn't overt, but it was enough to raise his suspicion further. He didn't confront her yet. The evidence needed to be undeniable before any accusation could be made. Throughout the afternoon, he continued monitoring digital activity. The fake confidential document had been untouched, but a small alert indicated that someone had tried to access it using an office terminal in a different location. He traced the access and noted the user. It was a critical lead, but he had to approach it carefully. Accusing someone prematurely could cause complications and alert the wrong person. The young employee suggested setting up another layer of observation, this time more focused on the office network and devices. She worked discreetly, adding monitoring software to key systems, ensuring that no one would notice. Her calm efficiency amazed him. She was clever, cautious, and deeply reliable. As the day progressed, tension built quietly in the office. The staff continued their routines, unaware that a subtle investigation was unfolding around them. Every email, every login, every interaction was being carefully noted. He was patient, knowing that rushing could ruin the plan. By late afternoon, he had gathered more pieces of the puzzle. The access patterns, the fiancé's unusual behavior, and the small anomalies in the office network were beginning to form a picture. Someone he trusted, someone close, was involved in a breach of privacy. The realization was both troubling and motivating. He called the young employee to his office briefly. She entered, holding a tablet with the compiled notes. "Everything points to irregular access from within," she said softly. "I think we are close to finding out who it is." He nodded, appreciating her dedication. "Good work, but we must be careful. The next step needs to be precise." They decided to continue their observations quietly, focusing on subtle traps and careful monitoring. Each interaction in the office became a potential clue. Every glance, every hesitation, and every unusual movement was noted. They were building a record, a detailed map of office activity, waiting for the decisive moment to reveal the truth. As evening approached, he reviewed the day's findings. Patterns had emerged, small but telling. The fiancé's behavior, the irregular access, and the hidden camera installation pointed to someone who knew the office intimately. It wasn't a random act. It was deliberate, and it required someone with access and knowledge. He realized that uncovering the truth would take time, patience, and careful planning. There was no room for error. Every move had to be calculated, every observation precise. The young employee had proven invaluable, and he relied on her insight more than he would have admitted to anyone else. As the office emptied for the night, he sat alone reviewing every detail, preparing for the next phase of his investigation. The sense of being watched had evolved into a methodical determination to uncover the truth. He understood that trust, once broken, could only be restored through clarity and accountability. He looked at the security system one last time, noting every minor anomaly, every subtle clue. The game of observation and patience would continue, and he would not be outmaneuvered. Tomorrow would bring new opportunities to gather evidence and confirm his suspicions, and he would approach it with the same careful, deliberate strategy that had guided him through years of challenges. "I'm here," he said finally, "but I want you to be careful. Don't mention this to anyone else. Not until I figure out what's going on." She nodded, relief and fear mixed in her eyes. She left the office quietly, closing the door gently behind her. He sat alone, staring at the desk, the reports, the computer screens. Every detail of his office now seemed suspect. He began examining the room with careful attention, looking for anything that seemed out of place. The thought that someone had infiltrated his private space unsettled him more than he wanted to admit. Hours passed as he scrutinized every corner, every wall, every fixture. Nothing obvious appeared, but the sense of intrusion lingered. He couldn't shake it. It wasn't just about a camera. It was about trust, control, and the realization that someone had crossed a line into his personal space. He thought about the people he interacted with daily, the assistants, the staff, the few close colleagues. Could one of them be responsible? The idea seemed impossible, yet the evidence or the suggestion was undeniable. Later in the day, he summoned the IT department under the guise of routine maintenance. He asked them to perform a thorough check of the office's electronics and security systems. While they worked, he observed quietly, noting every reaction, every hesitation, every glance. He was looking for something or someone out of place. The young employee who had warned him returned briefly, bringing him coffee and a few notes she had made about the unusual installation. He glanced at the notes, appreciating her diligence. She had carefully marked the location she suspected, and had even drawn a small sketch. It was simple, yet it spoke volumes about her attention to detail. "Thank you for this," he said, giving her a small nod. "You did the right thing by coming forward." Her lips pressed into a thin line, a mixture of pride and anxiety. She didn't speak, but the look in her eyes said it all. She hoped she hadn't made a mistake by trusting him with this information. As the day wore on, he remained in his office, pacing occasionally, thinking. The office around him carried on as usual, the staff unaware of the storm quietly brewing behind closed doors. He considered every possibility, every person who could have motives. None seemed likely enough to justify this betrayal, yet the evidence suggested otherwise. By evening, the IT team reported back. They had found anomalies in the network, evidence of a small unauthorized device linked to the office security system. The confirmation made his blood run cold. It wasn't a mistake, it wasn't random. Someone had deliberately planted it, and the implications were far-reaching. He sat back in his chair, trying to piece together the puzzle. Who among those he trusted could do this? The question gnawed at him, and he realized that finding the answer would require careful observation, patience, and strategy. He couldn't rush. He had to be deliberate. As the office emptied, leaving only a few lingering employees, he thought about the young woman who had brought this to his attention. Her courage had been invaluable. Without her, he might have never discovered the breach. He made a mental note to ensure she was protected and acknowledged for her honesty when the time was right. Night fell, and he remained at his desk, reviewing every interaction, every recent meeting, every person who had been close to him. He knew that tomorrow would require action, but tonight he would observe, plan, and prepare. The sense of being watched had turned into a resolve to uncover the truth. The office lights dimmed, leaving him in a soft glow from his desk lamp. He stared at the shadows in the corners, imagining the hidden camera, imagining the person behind it. The feeling of intrusion was personal now, not just professional. It touched something deep within him, an awareness of vulnerability, a reminder that trust was both precious and dangerous. He leaned back, exhaling slowly. This was just the beginning. Tomorrow would bring more questions, more observation, and perhaps answers. But for tonight, he let the quiet office settle around him, the weight of suspicion and determination heavy in the air. He knew the next steps would be critical, and he would approach them with the same precision and focus that had built his empire. And somewhere in the office, she had disappeared into the night, unaware of how pivotal her words had been, unaware that she had set in motion a chain of events that would uncover more than just a hidden camera.